Okay, brothers and sisters, introducing once again, you remember Mickaël Hall, our resident French-speaking gospel guru. That is right. By day, he's shaping young minds as a high school teacher. And by early morning, like myself and Andrea, he's illuminating the scriptures as a seminary instructor. When Mickaël's not in the classroom, he's on a never-ending quest for fascinating gospel tidbits with a knack for blending faith, fun, and a dash of French flair. Mickaël brings a unique flavor to our program. This is horrible. I'll get this done. We'll go on with it. I might do.
I think I'm going to do this over again. Let's just go.
All right, Mickaël, welcome to the program. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good. Okay. Here's the deal. Brothers and sisters, I don't know anything about Ezra's eagle, and you guys have been hounding me. Well, Mickaël is back on the program to teach me all about it. Welcome to the last dispensation. You're living in it. Okay, Mickaël, that's what we're talking about today. What in the heck? Well, you start where you need to. But I want to know, I know nothing about Ezra's eagle. What's going on here and why is it important? What drew you to it? And take it away.
Well, I'll tell you what drew me to it. And that should make it pretty clear why I believe it's important. A friend of mine shared this with me here. It's President Benson. President Benson invited every member of the church back in the 70s to read a particular book, and he made this invitation in general conference. So I'll let you listen to him.
Okay.
There is no conspiracy theory in the Book of Mormon. It is a conspiracy fact. And along this line, I would highly recommend to you a new book entitled None Dare Call It, Conspiracy by Gary Allen.
I have that book, and that is a famous clip there.
Yeah. The odd thing that I found is, can you see the title, Civic Standards for Faithful Saints, April 1972? That's
Yes.
the talk that he gave it in, and this invitation in the text version is cut. So it says there's no conspiracy theory in the Book of Mormon. It is a conspiracy fact. But they cut out the part where he invites everybody to read about
None Dare
it.
Call It a Conspiracy by Gary Allen.
Exactly. So if you haven't looked at it before, President Benson asked us to read it. And so I did. And the interesting conclusion that this came to is that the modern day, the latter day secret combination, if you will, gained power over the executive branch of the U.S. government, starting with Herbert Hoover. So when I found for the first time Ezra's eagle portrayed like this, if you look closely, feather number 1 is Herbert Hoover. So after reading the book that President Benson asked us to read, showing me that Ezra's eagle comes to the same conclusion as the book that President Benson asked us to read and that he endorsed publicly, got me very interested in why. How is that possible?
Okay, now, remember, I don't know I have no clue what the feathers, I have no clue what you're talking about. I mean, I do. I understand kind of, but I don't know what the eagle, the feathers, like, what is Ezra's eagle?
Well, Ezra's eagle is just a beast that Ezra saw in a vision of the last days.
And we're not talking about Ezra Tab Benson.
Right.
Right? We're talking about Ezra from the Bible.
Right.
Okay. And just let me just say this real quick and I'll stop interrupting him.
Oh, that's all right.
What I want you guys to know is I don't necessarily believe this is factual and that it is prophecy. And I don't even think that Mickaël for sure thinks that way either. I don't know. Don't quote me. But these are interesting things. And as it goes on and he explains it, as he continues to explain it, I'll probably be making a decision more and more. So am I right, Mickaël? We all have to make a decision about certain things that we might think are someone's, it could be simply speculative in nature or the real deal.
Definitely. I think, especially when researching the interpretations of prophecies, it's very important that you make informed decisions. And the best way to do that is to read the scriptures for yourselves. And that's what I'm going to do with you, is show you in the scriptures how the eagle is portrayed. And then we can talk about the interpretation of that eagle. And if anybody who's doing this study with us has not yet read it, you've got to read the scriptures. That's just fundamentally how you need to approach it. So let's do that together.
Yeah, because the scriptures are real. They're there. Second Ezra, it's there, and these are real verses. Whether you attach an eagle's feather to it or not, it still can mean the same thing, right?
Right. Yeah. And so if you look here, these are my notes where you'll see what I did is I took the vision that Ezra has in chapter 11, and I put it next to the interpretation in chapter 12. And I lined them up so that we can follow along with the vision and read the interpretation at the same time. So this will make it easier to understand. And there are different versions. Second Ezra's is in the Apocrypha. If you don't know how you feel about the Apocrypha, read what Jesus said about the Apocrypha in DNC 91. He says there are lots of truths and that there have also been lots of changes by the hands of men. So we need to approach this with the Spirit. That's Christ's approach to the Apocrypha and his instructions for us. So that being said, Second Ezra chapter 11 starts with Ezra saying, I saw rising from the sea an eagle that had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And in addition to those 12 feathers, it also says, I numbered her contrary feathers, and behold, there were 8 of them. So fundamentally, we have 20 feathers, 12 that were normal feathers, and 8 that were contrary feathers.
Okay.
And here's the interpretation. It says, he said to me, this is the interpretation of the vision. The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel. But it was not explained to him as I now explain to you, or have explained it. And the 12 kings shall reign in it one after another. So the wings or the feathers are kings. As for your seeing 8 little feathers clinging to its wings, this is the interpretation. 8 kings shall arise in it, whose time shall be short, and their years swift. So now we know what it means to be a short feather. We know that all these feathers are kings. We know that this represents a government, right? And this is in the book called also the Apocrypha, or not the Apocrypha, but the Apocalypse.
Right,
the
right.
Apocalypse of Ezra's. So we're talking about the end of the world. So let's read more about this government at the end of the world with all these kings. And I saw, behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her and were gathered together. The interpretation says, the days are coming when a kingdom shall rise on earth, and it shall be more terrifying than all the kingdoms that have been before it. So in the context of the last days, we're thinking about this government that has a lot of power over the entire earth.
Well, I believe that. What I'm saying is, whether that scripture means that or not, which it looks like it does, that's I'm in there. So I'm going to check that.
Awesome.
You know.
So let's continue. I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small. But its heads were at rest. The middle head was larger than the other heads, but it too was at rest with them. As for your seeing 3 heads at rest, this is the interpretation. In its last days, the Most High will raise up 3 kings. So the interpretation says the 3 heads are also 3 kings. So lots of kings. And I saw that the eagle flew with its feathers, and it reigned over the earth and over those who inhabit it. I saw how all things under heaven were subjected to it, and no one spoke against it, not a single creature that was on the earth. And then I saw the eagle rise upon its talons, and it uttered a cry to its feathers, saying, "Do not all watch at the same time. Let each sleep in its own place and watch in its turn, but let the heads be reserved for the last." I looked again and saw that the voice did not come from its heads, but from the middle of its body. So this starts giving us a chronology of the story.
This is almost like Daniel.
Definitely.
You know, we always look at Daniel's prophecy, but of the statue, maybe this is something that people have overlooked.
Definitely. It's interesting because here in chapter 12, verse 11, God says to Ezra, "This kingdom is the kingdom that was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel." Well, Daniel saw 2 visions, the one of the statue.
That's neat. I didn't know you were going to mention that right now.
I'm not looking at it on my cell phone, I promise. I'm not pretending that I know something.
It's awesome that you put that together so fast, because if you are familiar with the Daniel 2 statue prophecy and the Daniel 7 4 beast prophecy, these things start looking familiar. And in 2nd Esdras, we learn that the eagle is the 4th beast. And in fact, the prophet Joseph Smith said that the feet of the statue represent the United States. So that's another very interesting context for us as Latter-day Saints looking at this prophecy.
Right. I mean, because where else do you see an eagle except for United States of America?
That's another good point. All right. So speaking of Joseph Smith, it's actually interesting that in chapter 12, verse 17, 18 here, it says, "As for your hearing a voice that spoke, coming not from the eagle's heads, but from the midst of its body, this is the interpretation. After the time of that kingdom, great struggles shall arise, and it shall be in danger of falling. Nevertheless, it shall not fall then, but shall regain its former power." I find this interesting in the context of Joseph Smith's prophecy concerning the Constitution, how it will be hanging by a thread, right, in the last days, but that it will be saved. That sounds a lot like that verse 18 right there.
So I'm feeling like Ezra's eagle is talking about conspiracy. It's basically saying it's talking about a tyrannical government that will consume the world.
Yeah. And we just got through the beginning, and that's clear. Ezra wanted to tell us right away, that's the kind of government we're dealing with here in the last days. So now let's dive into the feathers. The feathers get pretty specific, and it says, "One feather on the right side rose up, and it rained over all the earth. And after a time, its reign came to an end, and it disappeared, so that even its place was no longer visible." So a pretty normal feather. First one tells us how that works. And then the next feather rose up and rained, and it continued to rain a long time. While it was raining, its end came also, so that it disappeared like the first. And a voice sounded, saying to it, "Listen to me, you who have ruled the earth so long. I announce this to you before you disappear. After you, no one shall rule as long as you have ruled, not even half as long." And the interpretation clarifies the second feather, or the king that is to reign, shall hold sway for a longer time than any one of the 12. So if we're just looking at the eagle, we see that these feathers are getting grouped kind of in chunks. The second feather is extra long, twice as long as the others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So far, that's what we got. Then the third feather raised itself up and held the rule as the earlier ones had done, and it also disappeared. And so it went with all the feathers. They wielded power one after another, and then were never seen again. 2 little feathers shall perish when the middle of its time draws near. All right. And then verse 22, and after this, I looked and saw that the 12 feathers and the 2 little feathers had disappeared. And nothing remained on the eagle's body except the 3 heads that were at rest and 6 little feathers. This is the interpretation of the 12 feathers that you saw. So we have 12 feathers and 2 little feathers. And then when they disappear, that's kind of like an intermission. And so if we look at the picture, we see for a total of 14 feathers on one side. The only thing special about all 14 of those is that the second one was extra long, twice as long as the others. And then between that second one and halfway through, somewhere between the halfway mark and that second feather, 2 of them have to be short. It doesn't specify which 2. It doesn't say anything else about any of those 14. They're pretty normal. It kind of glosses over all the rest. So those are our 2 defining factors for that half of the eagle, and then it moves on to the other half.
So I'm curious, why does it start with Hoover? Did you already say that? Why do you?
Not yet, but that's
Okay,
a
sorry.
fantastic question. The reason why people have read this, the reason why it starts with Hoover is not because the first one was any sort of special, but because the second one was twice as long as everyone after.
More terms.
Right. So that fits with Roosevelt because he's the only one to have served more than 2. He was elected to 4 terms.
Right.
And it's actually super specific. This fits well with Roosevelt for more than just that reason. Yes, he's the only one to have been elected to 4 terms, but more specifically, it says he reigned a long time, and this feather, while it was reigning, ended and disappeared. And then a voice told it, "Listen to me, you that have ruled along so long. I announce this to you before you disappear. After you, no one shall rule as long as you have ruled, not even half as long."
No more, no more than 2 terms.
Right. And the law that the U.S. made that no president would serve more than 2 terms was made right after he died, but before the end of his 4th term was over.
Right.
Which is pretty much exactly how it's showed here. His end came, and then the voice said, "Before you disappear, I have to tell you this." Almost like the law was sandwiched right between his death and the end of his term. So that's
and
quite interesting.
What did it say about? What did it say about John F. Kennedy again? Number 5.
Well,
you haven't gotten to
John
that.
F. Kennedy.
Sorry.
That's all right. Let me show you this one. If the second one is Roosevelt, then the next group of feathers is somewhere between the second feather and the halfway mark, which would be the 10th out of 20 feathers. Somewhere in there, we have to have two presidents whose reign was cut short. And that happens to fit really well because we do have Kennedy, who was assassinated, and Nixon, who was basically kicked out. And they happen to be between the 2nd and the 10th. And everyone else between 1 and 14 is relatively normal as far as their length of reigning and the way that they end. So I just imagine the incredible number of possibilities that this could have turned out to be that wouldn't work. Like, we had 2 short feathers in the presidencies between Roosevelt and number 10, who was Reagan. We didn't have 1, we didn't have 3, and we didn't have a short feather on number 11, 12, 13, or 14 either. And none of them were long because of that law. So the fact that everything fits so well is definitely a super interesting correlation.
And like I said, folks, I'm just an observer. So for those who don't agree with this, it's still, the scriptures are still there and they mean something. They do mean something. And the planet is only so big. And and we got eagles in here and feathers. So, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong. I think I prejudged this a lot in the past without knowing anything about it. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is really, we have such an advantage being Latter-day Saints with a living prophet that we, believe and trust and follow, who's telling us, and since Joseph Smith has been telling us these are the latter days, but President Nelson has said these are the last parts of the latter days. So we're in the perfect context to look at our current world and start looking for who this government could be.
Right.
Because we're in the context of this vision right now. So now that we're moving to the other side of the eagle, it starts getting a little crazy, as you can tell by the image. One wing is much bigger than the other wing. And it says, in due time, the feathers that followed also rose up on the left side in order to rule. There were some of them that ruled, yet disappeared suddenly, and others of them rose up, but did not hold the rule. And I kept looking. I saw that 2 little feathers separated from the 6 and remained under the head that was on the right side, but 4 remained in their place. So the 6 remaining feathers, they're already split here. 4 are grouped together, and then the other 2 are separated. Then I saw that these little feathers planned to set themselves up and hold the rule. And 4 little feathers shall be kept for the time when its end approaches. So these 4 little feathers means that the end is approaching. And I kept looking. One was set up, but suddenly disappeared. That's the first feather on the left. And a second also, and this disappeared more quickly than the first. That right there, 2 very short verses, that has been the cause of so much talk, because those 2 descriptions are all we get, really, for the feathers that correspond with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That's it.
In other words, short, King 15 and 16.
Right. And the one was cut short, and the next one shorter than the first.
Wow. Everything is fitting.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I mean, so here's a little foreign insight. It's a cultural observation of mine that Americans have a hard time accepting the possibility that there could be corruption in their own government. But if you ask somebody who lives in a country where corruption is quite obvious, and it has been for quite a while, they already have that reputation among their themselves and their government that it's normal. They have no problem accepting that that's real. Then they recognize it. So they're the best types of people to ask about this stuff. So when they saw, for example, the election in 2020 and how there were some suspicious things that caused it to be an odd election, and everybody thought, and the numbers showed that Trump was going to win. And then in the end, they didn't announce the winner. And then later on, President Biden was announced as the winner.
Right.
Just the way that played out. You go ask somebody from another country who's used to this stuff, and they're like, oh, definitely, that was not a fair election.
No, they know because they have it happen all the time. Go to, what am I thinking of? Argentina and Venezuela?
Yep, for example.
Yeah, where they have that. Where you have, I don't know if those are the right countries I'm thinking of, but I think Venezuela.
Yeah, I think Venezuela's had some political troubles as well.
But yeah, they recognize it. So yeah. I want to ask you this, and I think it's very pertinent. When did the EZRA'S eagle come out? When did it begin?
So I believe the first person to publish this interpretation published it in around 2005. I'm not confident about that.
Okay, so it was when George Bush was in office.
Yeah. Most recently, it got really big and popular when the author Michael B. Rush published it in his book. I think that was maybe 10 years ago, max, but I probably have that date wrong too, but much more recently. And it makes sense because you would have to wait it out long enough to see if the patterns do correspond. But what's incredible to me is that President Benson told us to go read about the Latter-day Secret Combination, which started with Herbert Hoover, according to that book that he told us to read.
Mm-hmm.
He told us that in like 72, was it? Maybe 72 or 76, right around the time that book was published. So we were in like Nixon's administration. We weren't very far into this.
That's a while
prophecy.
back. Right.
So that was very early on. And President Benson was already telling us something that corresponded with precisely this. And here we are decades later, we're seeing it playing out, and the pattern has continued to match, which is very interesting.
Right. It's this isn't as and I'm sorry, folks. That's where we shouldn't be closed-minded. And I have been about it. And I've got a friend that's closed-minded about it too. Wouldn't look at it. ezra'seagle, whatever. The brethren aren't talking about that. Well, the brethren don't talk about a lot of things that we look at in the scriptures. Doesn't mean it's not valid. And this is becoming way more interesting to me than I thought it would. Way more interesting to me.
In fact, one of the other main reasons why I felt like I could trust that this interpretation could be true is the way that President Nelson's been talking for the last 6 years, right? In 2018 or so, that was like the beginning of President Trump's presidency. He was saying things like, we're just getting started toward the ramping up scene, the winding up scene, the exponential growth, really when things are going to start accelerating a lot.
Right.
And he said that in 2018. Well, if you look at this timeline here, that's precisely where that first feather on the left side starts getting crazy. So with that frame of mind, from what President Nelson has been saying, I feel like there could have been something to this, which led me to go read it for myself, which is what we've just done here. And we haven't even gotten into the last 4 feathers or the 3 heads. And, we could go into that if you want to. I'm not particularly fond of trying to predict the future with very minute details.
The future as far as who will be the feathers or what will happen during their tenure.
Yeah, others sound and come across as much more confident. But I'm not sure how the rest is going to play out. After Biden, we have 4 feathers and 3 heads. But we can certainly read the rest of the scripture to see what the prophecy says that we can look forward to.
Okay, let's do it. I've got about 20 more minutes. Can we knock it out?
Yeah, this will take 10 minutes, maybe.
Okay,
maybe
cool.
Less.
I'm not rushing you, right?
No, I think we've gone at a pretty good pace here.
Okay, good. But the 3 heads, meaning that will happen. Right now, the eagle has 1 head.
Well, currently in the scriptures, we're at the point where they're still asleep, all 3. The middle one was larger, but they're all still asleep.
Interesting.
So, but they're about to wake up here. If we keep reading chapter 11, verses 28 and on. While I continued to look, the 2 that remained, these are the 2 feathers after the one that corresponds with Biden. The 2 that remained were planning between themselves to reign together. And while they were planning, one of the heads at rest, the one that was in the middle, suddenly awoke, and the head turned with those that were with it and devoured the 2 little feathers that were planning to reign. So we've got this. We were suddenly introducing 5 more characters. All 3 heads wake up. The middle one eats number 17 and number 18. And according to the interpretation, it says...
And I think that would, Oh, you're going to tell the attorney. Let me see if I can guesstimate because I'm not looking at it.
Yeah.
That would have something to do with maybe a non-governmental organization that has usurped completely everything as far as the executive branch is concerned.
That is one theory.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's three parts of a non-governmental organization or a foreign organization or foreign, I've heard foreign governments. I've heard the three branches of our government. We're not sure. Those are all theories. The scriptures say that the three eagles are three kings. So, that's all we have to work with.
Right.
But it says the three kings that shall renew many things in it and shall rule the earth and its inhabitants more oppressively than all who were before them. Therefore, they are called the heads of the eagle, because it is they who shall sum up his wickedness and perform his last actions. A pretty sinister description of those three heads or those kings.
And that is a number. That's not a number. That's the plucked, where they're plucked.
17 and 18 just got plucked out. But that description was of the three heads themselves. And we get a bit more about the heads. It says the middle head was greater than the other two heads. I saw how it allied the two heads with itself. Moreover, this head gained control of the whole earth and with much oppression dominated its inhabitants. It had greater power over the world than all the feathers that had gone before. After this, I looked again and saw the head in the middle suddenly disappear, just as the feathers had done. As for your seeing that the large head disappeared, one of the kings shall die in his bed, but in agonies. So that's the story of the middle head.
Now, I've got this other lady that wants to come on, and she's correlating this too with, have some thought maybe it was the kings of England as well too.
Huh. That could be an interesting study.
Well, only because she thinks that King Charles is an antichrist. And when they talk about the image of the beast, that's talking about money. But we know if you go retro in Daniel's prophecy, even the abomination of desolation, that they are talking about the Roman government, whoever the emperor was at the time. Was it Nero? No, it was 70 AD. But anyway, yeah. So but this definitely, if you're talking eagle, hello, hello, McFly, hello, McFly. That's United States of America.
Yeah, the eagle's definitely the mascot.
Yeah, and where is the Council on Foreign Relations located? Who is the leader of the free world? Who is modern Rome? It is America, because you think about it. We can be the most righteous, but if we are taken over by evil, we can become the most wickedest and the most, not the people, but the people become wicked when they become passive and complacent, right? Complacency is evil, right? Would you say?
Yeah, I think in the Book of Mormon especially, it condemns the complacency when evil is getting more powerful and the people are too complacent to do anything about it or to stand up for righteousness. It's very true.
So we definitely are the biggest mover and shaker as far as globalism is concerned. Now, more than ever, we are some of the biggest, most corrupt people. And I think it really got going with the Clinton administration. Can we go back were you done here? I'm sorry.
No, we can go back, or we can keep going to the end of the
just
vision.
Real quick. Let's go back to King number 12. or feather 12. Let's go back to feather 12 just for a second. Can you do that?
On the image, feather 12, that's Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
In the scriptures, we don't get any information on number 12.
Why?
It's grouped with all the other ones on the right wing that reigned and then were not seen again.
And it doesn't mean just because that's omitted, it doesn't mean that these grouped together weren't influential in bringing about the future, the corruption in the future, right?
Right. The argument for that would be they're all still part of the same beast.
Right. Right. We don't need to like break it down every king. And he was wicked too, and this is the wickedness he did. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is all about a transformation, a transition from righteousness to wickedness.
Well, let's talk about Jesus Christ for a second, maybe lighten things up, because the good news in this vision is that Christ does come and justice is served to this beast. The two heads remained after the middle eagle disappeared, or as it says, died in his bed in agonies. Not a great way to go. But the two heads that remained, which also in like manner ruled over the earth and its inhabitants, he saw the head on the right side devour the one on the left, which is so typical of something, Satan or his followers would do, right? They would fight amongst each other, kill each other.
Right.
For as the two who remained, the sword shall devour them. For the sword of one shall devour him who was with him. And then a lion comes and just rebukes this eagle so hard. But it's interesting because the lion, the interpretation says, the lion whom you saw is the Messiah whom the Most High has kept until the end of days, who will arise from the offspring of David and will come and speak with them. He will denounce them for their ungodliness and for their wickedness, and will display before them their contemptuous dealings. For first, he will bring them alive before his judgment seat, and when he has reproved them, then he will destroy them. But in mercy, he will set free the remnant of my people, those who have been saved throughout my borders, and he will make them joyful until the end comes, the day of judgment of which I spoke to you at the beginning. So this brings us to the good news. Christ will come. He will rebuke and judge the beast. He will save his people, the remnant of God's people. And the way that he talks to the beast, I think, is interesting because he addresses the beast saying, "Are you not the one that remains of the four beasts that I had made to reign in my world?" Christ made the beast to reign in his world. That's what we learn there. Why? So that the end of my times might come through them. Now, we could ponder that for a while, but it's just another highlight that this beast was made to reign at the end of times. And then the beast is burned, and that's imagery of the second coming, burning by fire.
Right.
And then the last two little feathers, the two little feathers that we almost forgot about, the two that kind of separated themselves a little while ago, these two, they come after this eagle has been rebuked, and all that's left of this kingdom is it's a brief reign, and a reign full of tumult. And it was brief and full of tumult, and that's all we get. Those last two feathers don't really get to reign on much, because I guess there's not much left. And then
well, they don't have power. I think that's what it means, is they have no power at all.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the imagery is that they separated themselves from the body of the eagle.
But this is after Christ's return, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, which could mean America still exists. We're revamping our constitution. Here's where Zion is, right? The New Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, out of Jerusalem will go forth the gospel, and out of Zion the law. So maybe it's just saying that these guys are bowing down. I don't know. Or when you clip an eagle's wings, they can't fly anymore. What is the interpretation? Are there different interpretations for that?
Well, chapter 12 just says that the two little feathers passing over to the head that was on the right, this is the interpretation. It is these whom the Most High has kept for the eagle's end. This was the reign that was brief and full of tumult, as you have seen. So they've been kept for the end. The chronology tells us that the Most High is the one who kept them from the end. But then again, it was the Most High who apparently, according to the lion or Christ, it's Christ who put the beast there to reign at the end of days.
It reminds me of the scripture, I have plucked them out of the world.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe they're
plucked.
Maybe
perfect.
Maybe they are two righteous leaders. Or it's I have uproot. Yeah. And when I shall have plucked them out, I will return and have mercy on them. And I will bring them back. This is Jeremiah 12. Bring them back, every man to his inheritance. Plucking out what does it mean in Matthew? So if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out, pluck it out. God will pluck them out, indicating that he will uproot them and remove them from their land as a consequence of sin. However, the verse also communicates the idea that this judgment is not the end of the story. God promises that after he has removed them, he will return them. So, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good imagery. Imagery is so awesome. It really helps us to learn and see things from a different angle.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So that is Ezra's eagle.
Yeah. I mean, it's packed full of stuff.
No wonder
we can only wait and see.
No wonder people get on this thing about it and they're always talking about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, maybe you should have just gone and looked at it, Troy, instead of being a doofus and not. Is there anything else, brother?
No, that's all the scriptures give us.
Well, and then now there's books on it. There's different interpretations. There's different elaborations. I think I might go through it because these are scriptures, whether you put an eagle to it, whether you put the United States to it, we got to put something to it. They are leaders. They are kings. So do with it what you will. Bonsoir. Monsieur. Bonsoir, monsieur.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Is bonsoir, is that right?
Yeah, bonsoir is good evening.
Or good evening, but
you're
it's
2 hours ahead of me, so you're
12:33.
still in the morning.
Hold on. Merci et bonjour.
Merci
Et, right?
et bonjour.
Bonjour. That's pronounced E-E-T?
Et.
Okay. Merci et bonjour.
Merci et bonjour is hello.
Well, why? I said, how do you say thank you? No, I did not say that. I didn't ask that. I said thank you and good day in French.
Good day. Yeah, it's funny because bonjour is literally good day. But we say that when we're saying hi, hello.
Oh.
We could say bonne journée, like have a good rest
good
of your day.
Okay.
Yeah. Bonne journée.
How about see you in the next time?
À la prochaine.
Oh, all right. Okay. If you guys want to go check out his program, what's the name of your program?
Saint de la Seconde Venue. It's in French. It's Saints of the Second Coming. If you look up Saints of the Second Coming, you'll find the channel, the English version, but I don't focus at all on, putting this stuff out in English because I really focus on putting out what's not yet out there in French to translate it and give them access in French.
Awesome. Thank you so much. EZRA'S Eagle, now I know.